Welcome to another episode of Framing the Hammer, the podcast produced by 4A Arts, American Alliance of Artists and Audiences, where we believe that American arts, culture, design, and craft are basic human rights and powerful tools for a whole and healthy society. We are working to change the narrative around American creativity for our society and ultimately our elected leaders so that the creative economy is supported at a level commensurate with its impact on the entire American economies. Today, I'm joined by the Director of Community Engagement, Sabrina Estrada, and CEO Patrick McWhorter of Arizona Citizens for the Arts. Thank you for joining me, both of you. So we are lucky at 4A Arts to be working with Arizona Citizens for the Arts in trying to build out some of their capacity, some of their ground troops, if we can call them that, and engage people in the funding model for the arts in Arizona. So that's why we're all here today. And most importantly, what have each of you most recently experienced in Arizona arts, culture, design, or craft that has inspired you? Sabrina?
Yes, thank you for asking that, Gavin. One recent experience that inspired me was attending an artist organization in Surprise, Arizona, just yesterday called Ground Floor Artists. It's a shared artist workspace and it's tucked away in an industrial park. But more than just being a place for different visual artists to practice their craft and sell their art, it was a community. The artists all come together to eat lunch together. They share their art with one another, teach classes of all levels to the community. And it was really inspiring to see how engaged the community was. And there was just some really incredible people who were passionate about bringing creativity to their community.
That sounds fantastic. In a community called Surprise, Arizona, too, huh? I'm sure there's plenty of jokes made about that. But how wonderful, and the idea that we all know that communities are stronger when creativity is involved. That's, I'm jealous of that. Patrick, how about you?
Well, that will fit right into my story. Last year I got to visit small mining town called Globe. It is in the mountains east of Phoenix, and really this town has been in rough times for many, many years. Really suffered a decline in population and so forth, even though at once it was the center of power in Arizona. We were a copper mining state when we became a state. And last year, well, first of all, earlier in the year, I had recruited a member of the city council in Globe to join our board of directors. And then it just so happened that they hosted the Rural Policy Conference that's held every summer, but moves around to different cities. So Sabrina and I both went to the conference. And the thing that they have been most proud of, they've been working on for several years, is something called Starizona. And so the idea of Starizona is they have taken just about every physical structure and more to come in downtown and sort of turning it into a tourist attraction. And they literally, sometimes they have artists who come in and do the painting, or they have them come in and organize dozens and dozens of volunteers in the community to be part of the painting project. And so they're trying to turn Starizona and Globe into a tourist destination, which it's never been. It's the highway that goes somewhere else through it, and nobody would think of stopping there. And so, they have the markers all around. There's like a trail to follow Starizona. And the woman who, she and her partner started all of this, one of them we also recruited for our state agency for the arts, the Arizona Commission on the Arts. And she's turning in her first few months into one of the greatest advocates we have on the commission. But seeing how building community and pride in community with the artists, but even more significant, the common folk of the town has truly inspired me.
That is Arizona Citizens for the Arts, for sure. That is Excellent. And that's exactly what we need to build out and get more people engaged so they see the importance of it all. Well, on that note, then, Patrick, could you give us a little bit of history and the mission of Arizona Citizens for the Arts?
Sure. Well, our mission is to build community support in all forms for the arts and culture and the creative economy overall. That includes general advocacy for just getting support, whether it's philanthropy or partners, the business community, etc. But we have been most known throughout our history for advocating for public funding for the arts. Through national networks, we support the National Endowment for the Arts and their funding ask every year with Congress. And then and we do some local funding issues as we have capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But the most significant thing we've been doing since we were formed in 1981 is to advocate at the state legislature for the money they need to put up to ensure that the NEA money comes in. And so every year we are at the state capitol, we are organizing the grassroots advocates to support that. And Arizona is a very fiscal conservative state. So that is never an easy ask there. It seems to be an uphill climb every year. For 13 years, we've not been in basically the ongoing general fund of the budget. So we start over with zero every single year. This year, we even have zero in the governor's recommendation because we have a huge deficit. So we are seen and known as the main advocates for securing the state dollars for the arts.
Can you give me a little more clarification what you meant by making sure that essentially Arizona spends its allotment, because otherwise NEA funding wouldn't come? Is that right? Can you explain that kind of conditional relationship there?
Well, NEA dollars, a huge portion of the NEA dollars are allocated to the states. And there's some formula they use. Don't ask me what that is.
Sure.
But somehow it determines the number each year that the states have to match. And they have various forms that states use to do that. But most common, and it's sort of how we compare when we look at per capita, we compare the state appropriation. Mm-hmm. And now we have some other sources as well, but it is this state appropriation that in the last 2 years, each of the last 2 years, we secured $5 million. The most ever before that was $2 million. Mm-hmm. So that's the troubling thing about this year is if we literally did get zero, it would go from 5 million to zero, which would have a detrimental effect on so many organizations all across the state because there's a great emphasis at our commission on funding in rural Arizona, mm-hmm. And not just giving all the money to the big organizations in sort of our largest two cities. So, yeah, we are, and the other issue is we're actually climbing up there a little bit. That our number is higher, that the NEA number is higher. That it's going to be even more of a challenge to meet the match.
Right. And you've got to be able to get the legislator to meet the match to get that NEA funding. Otherwise, does the NEA just automatically say, oh, you're only going to fund up to 3 million, so we'll give you 3 million? Is that what it comes down to?
To be honest with you, I don't know what happens we've never not met the match. We've somehow pulled it out. Even the 2 COVID years where we actually got $0, but our governor then, different governor than we have now, used relief money, and I guess the NEA took that, even though it's actually federal money, but they recognize the situation.
Right. Sabrina, aside from this funding, which is obviously super important, on your community engagement side, what do you see as your most pressing needs and priorities for Arizona Citizens for the Arts?
Definitely it's growing our grassroots network in those areas these key legislative districts that we can have the most impact in getting our voice heard at the Capitol and finding a champion within the legislature to support our state investment in the Arizona Commission on the Arts. And it's also just about getting our network of advocates to respond to our action alerts when we put those out there. Because if they don't have the voice of the constituents, then it's just going to be coming from citizens and from these leaders of the arts organizations when the voice that really matters to our representatives is their constituents.
Occasionally, what is the silver bullet that makes somebody get engaged?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the tangible impact that the arts have in our communities, being able to have a personal connection, even if it's from their childhood of how they experienced arts, where they're able to say, yeah, the value of arts in our community is more than just a nice thing to have. It does have a social impact. And then when we're also able to deliver what the economic impact of having a vibrant arts community in your city, that is just another level of reaching more of the business community to support arts.
Yep.
Yeah, if I could add a little bit.
Please.
Every time I do a speech in the community, I begin with, what's your experience with the arts? And it's fun to hear people go, well, I guess I was in band and, in high school, or, parents made me take piano lessons. And I'm really glad they did, because I still play a bit today. And it's fun to hear those stories. And that immediately establishes this idea that it isn't just professional artists that are artists.
Yep.
And I think that immediately makes a connection to everything I have to say after.
It's so true. Going back to those deep childhood memories and experiences, and our teachers are so vital. And even those parents, which I say to myself constantly as I drag my kid kicking and screaming to the piano, you're going to thank me for this at some point. Now, that's not something that a 9-year-old wants to hear or ever can really understand, but it will make an impact. How has your work changed over the last couple of years, specifically pre-COVID, during COVID, and after COVID? Has Arizona Citizens for the Arts had to, obviously you had to pivot massively, but has the way you get to citizens changed over the last few years?
Well, I don't know if it's changed that much. Obviously, during COVID, everything went virtual and all of that. We all did that. But I think one of our challenges, really, which isn't a distinctly post-COVID thing because of COVID, but it's part of our political environment. We used to have at least a handful of legislative champions. And, when we had those really rough years, we could count on them. And shall I say, reasonable legislators who we can work with are that's getting to be a much shorter list. And while we don't only work with the majority, if you don't work with the majority, the party with the majority in the legislature, if you don't work with them, kind of depend upon the other side of the aisle, your chances aren't real good. You've got to have champions on that side. And so what's been happening since COVID, again, it's not, COVID isn't the cause, but, there's just a whole different dynamic at the legislature, and it leaves us very few. Even right now, we really have only one that we have cultivated in the last 2 years, is good friends with our lobbyist. And then we gave him an award last fall, along with a companion Democrat who they work on a lot of things together. So it kind of made sense. And he's now embraced us. I think we're not just, I'll run your reauthorization bill for you. Um, so we feel good that we've got one, but I mean, there's a couple kind of borderline ones, but so we'd like more, but having the one makes all the difference right now.
Especially because the arts are nonpartisan. This is what should help make everybody's lives better, everybody's economies stronger, everybody's communities stronger. This should not be a partisan issue. Why do you think? I mean, it isn't. We are not dealing with NEA crises or scandals from the 1980s anymore. Why is this such a partisan issue in your views?
I don't think it's actually even a partisan issue. It's that so many of these legislators just kind of stick together with their own agenda. I don't think they spend 2 minutes thinking about the arts, to be honest with you. And we go meet with some of them. I mean, we focus on the ones that we think are a more likely catch, but we still try. Our legislature at the beginning of the session was more than 50% in their first term.
Oh yeah, that makes a big difference.
And it's even more now because we've had something like 9 legislators leave office either voluntarily or involuntarily since the last year's session. This is the second year of this session, but and when we visit them, yeah, they kind of humor us. I think, they're not, we always take with us a list of all of the funding from the commission in their district for the last 5 years. And so something will sometimes catch their eye or, something like that. But kind of when they get back to their business,
yeah,
we're just forgotten. We have a $13 billion state budget. The Arts Commission budget last 2 years, $5 million. So it's a pretty small, sometimes people say it's a rounding error in the state budget.
Oh, that's not insulting at all.
No, but, I mean, if you just do math, it's not untrue.
Right.
So, I really think that's it more than anything. Now, we had one of those issues with an event, an LGBTQ event in last year. I guess that was last year, right at the end of the session. And we thought the whole culture war was going to open up because there was one legislator that was dialing in on that, saw this show at one of our museums, saw that it had been done. It was already done.
Right.
And bought into the narrative, the national narrative that was going all over.
Sure.
All the salacious things with kids that was happening. So we got close to that, but that's the only thing since I've been here for 2 years, the only thing that's come close as like a la 80s, 90s culture war issue.
Right. So, Sabrina, what is your highest priority for Arizona Citizens for the Arts over the next couple of years?
In the next couple of years, I really want to expand our partnerships, being able to bring in new allies as strong advocates for the arts community, and get the Arizona Commission on the Arts back into the ongoing budget.
Because it's not technically, you have to fight to get into the budget, but you're hoping, and I'm curious if other states already always have a line item that you just assume it's going to be there and you can't assume anything in Arizona. Is that right?
Yeah, since the commission was taking out of the ongoing budget, they've only received one-time money each year. So it's not a for sure thing each year if they're even going to get that one-time money. So if we were back in the ongoing budget, there would at least be a baseline of what we could expect for the commission to be able to give out for grants, and then for the arts community to have an idea of what a grant might look like for their organization.
With some reliable, consistent funding. Do you have any idea if that requires a law to be put into the budget or a constitutional amendment or anything, or how does that get done?
No, there's a couple of ways that could happen. No constitutional amendment, even though it feels like that's what
Sure
we
would be
need to
great,
do.
wouldn't it? An Arizona Bill of Rights for the arts. Let's do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, really. But they could do it with a regular law.
Hmm.
But most typically, you just do it through the budget negotiations.
Okay.
So in the legislative session, they have all their other bills that they're looking at, other policy things, et cetera, et cetera. But the most significant thing they do every year is it's a handful of bills, actually, but it's the state budget. And they have to do it. Otherwise, state government shuts down on July 1st.
Right.
And as much as, there are some that would be happy to do that, just like is happening in Congress with the federal budget, nobody has ever let that happen. So it really is. And by the way, there is no transparency in that negotiation of the budget. It is all done in the leadership of the two houses of the legislature and the governor. And of course, that makes things challenging these last 2 years because for the first time in a long time, we've had split leadership there. We have a Democratic governor and a Republican majority, although with a single vote margin in both chambers. So it's barely Republican majority, but nonetheless it is. So, that's why we have a lobbyist who can get inside the right rooms. They're not really the decision-making rooms, but kind of close to it.
Right.
It gives us some opportunity to know who we can target, in our effort to get the grassroots involved. So that's almost always the way it's done. And in some ways, even though I don't like the non-transparency part, it also almost gives us a little more leverage. So yeah, that's why we have any hope of having success this year.
Right. And then back to something you said earlier, Sabrina, what do you mean exactly by some of the partnerships, for example? I mean, I would like to think that hopefully our partnership is one of the examples, but what are some of the local state partnerships that you're hoping to cultivate that could really grow the impact?
Yes, our partnership with 4A Arts, especially with growing our grassroots network, but also with local organizations, being able to partner with them to have a stronger voice in those communities. Patrick, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, what we've done is we've restructured our old membership. We now call them partnerships. Of course, the arts organizations are the central, because when I came in, our memberships had dwindled among the arts organizations. I doubled that in the first year before Sabrina came on board. And but we decided we needed to have more than just the arts organizations. We need businesses that are especially connected and supportive of the arts, or that we actually, even more significant, that are part of the creative economy. So we're using that creative economy frame quite a bit more. And so the business community, other community leaders, elected officials at the local level. And so we have categories for all of those now. Educators, arts educators is another one. We haven't gotten started on yet, but we plan to.
It's so much about relationship building, which is kind of the most rewarding part, but boy, it's a slog, and you just have to bang those doors. That's what the organizing is about. Whew. Well, do either of you have notions of exciting things on the horizon of the Arizona arts ecosystem that you're looking forward to?
I think the most exciting thing happening in our arts community in general is, despite all of I've made it sound so bleak. We've made it sound so bleak, but there is kind of an awakening. For example, we had a bond issue in the city of Phoenix this last fall. It included just over $50 million for capital projects for arts organizations. I think there were 7 organizations that got funded.
Wow.
And that is a commitment to some pretty significant improvements, or in one case, a whole new building for these organizations. They are talking about doing a multi-organizational bond in Tucson, and I think what I'm hearing in several places, people are looking at, we really need this, and the local leaders are recognizing that.
Mm-hmm.
They recognize it drives tourism,
Mm-hmm.
it drives the economy. In other ways, we just did a statewide tour with the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 study, and there's just so many great data points in there about there is such a great ripple effect for the arts. It's not just the arts that produce these jobs. They produce them for all of the businesses related to increase our arts activity. So that's got people kind of excited right now. And so that's what I'm most excited, that as we're doing our advocacy and we're building the grassroots and we're lining up more people, they're doing their work to really put arts on the map. We've been on there for a while, but we've not been recognized for it. And, the tourism factor, for example, I talk to people and they say, there really isn't much arts going in Arizona. I'm like, I beg your pardon.
I beg to
There's
differ.
a lot of things here that you don't know about, and you should, and you'll change your mind. So that is, I think, all of that is congealing and producing, I think, a very good moment for the arts.
Anything to add, Sabrina?
Yeah, I was also going to talk about the Go Bond, but just to talk a little bit more about the AEP 6 tour that we did, I think what was exciting about that is these arts organizations are also realizing how impactful this study has been, and they're asking us to come back and share this with their city council members. And so they're just being more involved and with what is going on in their community, with getting that local support too.
Awesome. Things are going, there are so many things to look forward to. And I think there's reason to be optimistic. But then also on a personal level, things that fill our souls. How are the two of you artists?
Well, I'm going to let Sabrina start on that one.
Yeah, well, for me, I was always involved with music. I was a band kid. I played clarinet, and I started my career as a music teacher. So as I've joined Citizens, I still wanted to continue to create. So I'm in a community choir, and it's really wonderful because it's people from all ages, all different backgrounds and skills levels. And right now we are practicing Mozart's Requiem that we're going to be performing with a symphony, and it's a big accomplishment, and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for people in the community, especially if they're just there to sing and they get to perform this masterpiece with a whole symphony. So
that's thrilling.
It's a really, really wonderful opportunity.
What's the name of your choir?
Phoenix Community Chorus. It's with the Phoenix Community College.
Great. How about you, Patrick?
Well, first of all, I want to know the date of that. I also have to mention, right after she started at Citizens, the Phoenix Community Chorus went to Ireland last year.
Nice.
That was pretty cool.
The arts can help you see the world, both experience it and entertain it, but also see it. That's great.
Yeah. So, I'm one of the kid stories, right? So I started out with music. I played the flute. This is all back in the Midwest where I grew up. I had this teacher who had been, or maybe still was, playing with the Cleveland Symphony, which is actually a renowned symphony. So I was taking private lessons with her, and she said, you keep going, and you could be playing the Cleveland Symphony, and it was wonderful. Then I moved to Arizona, and I just somehow didn't keep it up. There were different things going on at my school here, which included the most robust theater program I've ever seen.
Uh-huh.
And we did something like 6 shows a year. Most schools do 2. And that's how I ended up meeting my wife, my future wife. And then did a little bit after graduating college. So always kind of drawn to the theater then. And then we raised 3 boys here. Our middle son is a professional music theater actor in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess with our origin story of our marriage, kind of made sense that we would have that. And our oldest son does improv in Mesa.
Oh, wow.
So kind of all over the family.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for the incredible work you do, both for the citizens in your communities, but for the state of Arizona, and frankly, for the entire artistic ecosystem across the country, because you are national leaders, which is why it is such a privilege to talk with you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, Gavin.
Anything else to add? A little scream. I'm not editing that out. That was adorable.
Sounds like Lincoln has something to say.
Right. Lincoln, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, he would.